Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Wizards from 1977. And this was a winner of my Patreon movie review vote. If you would like for me to review a movie of your choice, then click on the link below and pledge, and maybe I'll be reviewing your movie next month. And this movie was selected by Austin. Ralph Bakshi's Wizards has become kind of a cult classic over the years. And for a director who most of his filmography arguably is cult classics other than like Lord of the Rings and I guess maybe Cool World, but that to me feels like a cult movie too. Or, is kind of cultish. I don't like it that much, but this is kind of one of the images that people know of Peace on his kind of weird radiation horse thing. And that is one of the images you think of with Ralph Bakshi. I don't hear a lot of talk of this movie or references. It's mainly, the big ones like Fritz, like Lord of the Rings, like things like that. But this was his first fantasy film. It was his first film that wasn't kind of, he had Fritz the Cat, Coonskin, and Heavy Traffic all right in a row. And this was kind of showing he could do different sort of stuff and fantasy films. And it's actually his only fantasy film that is his own original idea. It had been this fantasy idea he had had since high school. He actually tried to pitch it to CBS and call it T-Wit. I'm not sure who would be the T-Wit in it, but he had been developing this for a while. He wanted to do this epic fantasy film. He didn't get a ton of money. In fact, it was pretty low budget. I've heard people say it was $2 million. It was under $2 million for an animated film, especially one of this scope. That's very small, actually, with the crew he wanted and everything he wanted to accomplish. There's kind of a lot of cheats he does to sort of make it work. I know that's been knocked a ton of times from anyone reviewing the film, and it's probably not the preferable way to have made this film. I'm sure Ralph Bakshi would have liked to have made a bigger budget Wizards, but he couldn't. And the cheats, to be honest, he gives them sort of a narrative framing. Almost all backstory or narration dumps are done with these kind of storybook images and narration going over them. But the actual story of the film is done in kind of regular kind of animation, I guess. And then he has rotoscope only in the battle scene. So you understand almost as an audience member that these certain things have different animation in them narratively, that sort of in filmmaking technique wise, at least he found out a way to do it as a storyteller. If he randomly had designs change and stuff like that, I think that would be different, but he actually found a way to work around that. It feels like a smart director, actually. It kind of like makes a sort of a semblance of sense. You have that going against this movie, and then you have the massive amount of backstory you have to get to get to the actual story, because it's first that Earth as it is now is completely nuclear bombed out, and then there's like everyone becomes a mutant, I think, and I'm not kind of explaining this poorly to like make fun of it. It's just there's a lot going on in this movie. I've seen this movie a couple times. I don't think I could ever tell you what the plot of this is. There's too much. It really does such a crazy info dump at the beginning. I don't know why they think anyone can keep up with the nonsense that is that. I applaud it. Like, it does feel like someone who has spiral notebooks full of backstory that he's been, just like coming back to for like 15 to 20 years because he really loves it, and you can totally tell that. The enthusiasm is not the problem. He did not condense this at all. So Earth was devastated. This is millions of years. I'm kind of looking at Wikipedia because this is like all in the first couple minutes of the movie, but it's basically Earth was devastated by a nuclear war. I thought terrorists were involved. Wikipedia doesn't remember that, I guess. There's 2 million years for the radioactive clouds to once again allow sunlight to reach the surface. A small bit of humans survived the apocalypse, while the rest were changed into mutants who roam the wastelands and all that. And that's where you get, fairies and elves and dwarves and stuff from the radiation from this war for 2 million years. And then you get 3,000 years of peace, and their ruler, Della, the queen of the fairies, but then Della suddenly goes into a trance and gives birth to twins, and those twins are Avatar and Black Wolf. And Black Wolf is like really shitty, and Avatar is really cool. And then 3,000 years after that, Black Wolf has risen and like they fought originally and Avatar took him down, but now Black Wolf has risen and Avatar has to take down Black Wolf, and he gets a team of people, including an assassin who's first called Necron 99, which is like a super cool AOL screen name before there was even AOL, which is insane. And he's the guy you see in all the posters, Necron 99, but then he becomes Peace because he gives up on that. And he has to give away his cool name. Why would you ever do that? You have Necron 99. Come on. And him and Eleanor and Avatar are going to go and take down Black Wolf, I guess. And Black Wolf is using this projector showing images of basically Nazi propaganda to scare the other side and show them how powerful they are and embolden his armies, who usually forget why they're fighting midway because they're so stupid and all that stuff. This was, as Ralph Bakshi and people like to joke about, this was considered his family film, or more of his fantasy film, or get close to someone in a family, or maybe a family could see, because I don't think you really want to see Fritz the Cat with your family. I don't know your family, maybe they do. This was his idea to kind of show a lot more versatility than he'd previously shown with this film, and that was his idea. He was actually making this at the same time at 20th Century Fox. George Lucas was making Star Wars. In fact, it was actually originally going to be called The War Wizards, but George Lucas asked him not to do that because he was worried about confusion. And at first you're like, is that a joke? Ralph Bakshi was a major filmmaker, and he's ever talked to people who saw Star Wars like the first weekend, and it was like sci-fi nerds, when it was originally like breaking, who were interested in Star Wars. And those same sci-fi nerds would probably see Wizards. No one knew Star Wars was going to be what it is and is now and all those things. So I actually sort of get why Lucas would want that. That makes total sense. And that's also why Mark Hamill's in this. This is actually Mark Hamill's, his actual big screen debut was in an animated film. His live action debut is Star Wars. But the first film he was ever in was Wizards, which is interesting also considering what he would become later. He basically just got a nice paycheck from Ralph Bakshi. Supposedly he needed the work at the time. I don't know, but he was in it for a little bit and then he gets shot. It's not even worth having him in it, really, but he's there. Okay, it's an interesting story. It's very cool. It does feel like the 70s Adventure Time or something like that. I wouldn't be shocked if you found out Pendleton Ward had seen this movie or was some sort of an influence. I also wouldn't be surprised if he didn't. I don't know who came up with post-nuclear war, that's where elves came from and shit idea. I don't know if it was Wizards first. I know it wasn't Adventure Time, but I'm not sure who came up with that first. It's an interesting enough of an idea. I think the thing is this is like most sci-fi fantasy at the time, and not like what Star Wars did was amazing. All the backstory and the world building, and they got it to work into a suspenseful motion picture. Wizards is the opposite. There's so much backstory and lore building and world building and all that stuff that you kind of get completely lost in it. That's why I could barely tell you what happened in this movie, and I've seen it several times. I enjoy watching this film, and I can definitely see that he would be an interesting fantasy director, which also led to his next film, which would be Lord of the Rings, which was a film I was really into as a kid, actually. I wish I had actually seen this as a kid. Watching it this time, I wish I had seen it when I was like 11, 12, even though I think it would have been okay. I don't know if it was that available because his films and availability at that time, not 100%, but it's just a hard film. It's dense in terms of there's so much going on. It's not really character based. It's more plot, world building kind of based. It has interesting ideas like the, film and what it can do to people and what propaganda it could do to people. So I guess in a way, Wizards totally got the whole Trump thing, I guess. I don't know. Or Facebook and all that. It does feel like a sci-fi fantasy at the time because they wanted to push all these ideas into it and they never had the money to properly do the vision they probably wanted, and they never had the time to do the vision they really wanted. So they have to make concessions and so forth. And this feels like very of the time, like the kind of thing you'd expect from that. I think this is an interesting attempt at the very least. I used to watch a lot of Sci-Fi Channel in the 90s and stuff, and this is the kind of stuff they play, and you go, oh, well, if you really, think about what they're doing and stuff. And now we don't really put up with that from fantasy films because things have evolved. But this is a very clunky one. I think it works in terms of its originality and everything that's going on with that. But, and I also like the design, which does feel like very of the moment. I think this was still Bakshi, for the 70s up until the very early 80s, he was like an of-the-moment filmmaker. This did make its money back. It would cost about $2 million. It made about $9 million. That worked out for him at the time. It wasn't a huge hit. It wasn't like Fritz, and it wasn't like Lord of the Rings, but I think it's like maybe like second or third on there. And it feels like, if you look at the designs, it feels like a mural you would see at a bong shop in the 1970s. Like all the designs, like Avatar is really cool. I like Eleanor. I like Necron 99, who I refuse to call Peace because Necron 99 is a way cooler name. Those are all people like that would totally be at home in the 70s style, like on a van that you'd see at that time. Like that was still concurrent with that time period. So it feels like very cool and of the time. And I like that, like, you know, some of that stuff I know people think is lame, like drawings on bongs or whatever. Like, and I understand like thinking that's like not the coolest or most interesting design, but I sort of like it because there's not other animated films that went this direct with it. And also, you know, you have to think with Bakshi, so much of what he did with Fritz the Cat and his other things, I mean, he had a sort of a political point. I don't know if you think of any of those films with their political ideas, although I haven't really reviewed Heavy Traffic or Coonskin. But with the X-rated animated stuff was like taking off after Fritz the Cat, I'm sure he wanted to distance himself from that, and I'm sure he wanted to do something different. So I kind of get going in this avenue, but like this is right when like heavy metal magazine's breaking. This is right when sci-fi and fantasy is about to blow. You know, Star Wars is literally about to happen. It's happening right next to him as he was talking with George Lucas at budget meetings with 20th Century Fox and everything like that. So he was on the cusp and he was in the right area, actually. It's just that like the direction and story is such a weird, odd mess. I sort of liked it more this time than I've ever liked it before. Other times I've just like disregarded it and been sort of disappointed, to be honest with you. But I thought this time I sort of met it at the right level, but understood its messy vision. And I think you kind of have to look at it that way, because if you accept it as its messy vision, it actually sort of works. It works if you understand, like, okay, well, he has to do the narration from Susan Tyrrell, who's not credited for some reason. He has to do it that way. He has to do the rotoscoping in a certain way, but it all sort of like meshes together in an interesting way. Now, the problem with the rotoscoping that sort of gets confusing is you're seeing this footage of Nazi stuff, and you're also seeing rotoscoping. So what is rotoscoping? What is the Nazi footage is confusing. And there's things where like Eleanor disappears and she's like, I was hypnotized. I'm like, when? Like, what? No. There's so many, like, that guy, I don't know. There's so many times I was like, I don't know what's going on, but I do like looking at this. And I do feel that a lot with animated films of this era, where you'd get like a production team together and you never have that production team together ever again. It wouldn't be like a Disney or a Pixar, where it's like kind of, it's an office and you get the same people who work in that office. And with this kind of stuff, you get like this wholly different sort of vision. And I like its sort of uniqueness. I like it's of the timeness of it. And I sort of liked Avatar more this time. And even the with Black Wolf with the bones on him and everything like that. Like the whole idea of it in that world, like I almost wish someone would remake it or make it into a series or something, because I think that would be really great. Now, maybe that is sort of what became Adventure Time or something, and this is the 70s Adventure Time in a certain regard, but Adventure Time did a much better job with it and got to do all that lore and world building and stuff. This feels like someone who was so in love with this world and so in love with these ideas, and you get, there's so much enthusiasm there. You kind of want to believe in this world, even if there's so much fighting it, even his own direction and writing, like there's so much stopping you from getting into it. And the idea that we still see the images of Necron 99, the idea that this film still like made some money and stuff like that, I think shows you like there's something in there. And that used to be the thing with sci-fi fantasy. You used to see a film that had a shit budget that wasn't gonna work, that a normal person would be like, this sucks. You have to take that gem and make it something in your imagination. And I get that from Wizards. Of his 3 fantasy films, I still like it the least, and I think I prefer Fire and Ice in certain ways, but I haven't seen either of those in a little bit, so maybe I'm wrong. But I still, you know, if you like Bakshi and you aren't as into watching like the super sexual stuff and everything like that, I think this might be a better avenue to go in. And if you are okay with accepting it for all its faults, I think this is a cool movie for you. And I enjoyed kind of remembering what sci-fi and fantasy used to be before it had the entire world at its attention all the time. I think it was just trying to explain to you this world, whether it was a good idea or not, or something they could really accomplish. They were gonna do it anyway. And I appreciate Wizards and Ralph Bakshi for having the chutzpah to at least accomplish getting this movie done. I don't know if it was done in the best way, and I don't know if they had the resources to do it, but god damn it, they did it. And I appreciate Wizards for that, even if it isn't the easiest watch. So if you've seen Wizards and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to. And this was a winner of the Patreon movie review vote. If you would like for me to review a movie of your choice, then click on the link below and pledge, and maybe I'll be reviewing your movie next month. Thank you very much for watching.